Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good, pursuit of the adventure of life. We got, we're going to throw some things in the pot, see what happens, and cook something on up here today. But I can't do that as alone. So, as always, I'm joined by Rafe. Rafe, how are you doing today?
Zach, I am phenomenal. It is a great day to be doing a podcast with you. As usual, you can reach us at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. We're on, we're all over the place on the internet. Zach, the other day I was writing some computer code and my code could crash and crash and crash. And finally I looked at the data log and it said division by zero error. And then right after that it said listen to the buffer right there in my computer log. It was amazing stuff. Exactly, like I said, we're everywhere. And hey, if you are new to our podcast, thank you for listening. We appreciate having you here. We are nothing without our listeners. And remember, if you tell a friend to listen, you will get a free episode, and I will get pudding, and Zach gets brownies. So that's a good thing. Zach, speaking of brownies and pudding, tell us
We're
where
going to
we
bake
are.
something up. Yeah. So, I mentioned earlier we're going to put something together, bake it up, and see what happens. But we were talking beforehand about cooking, baking, chemistry, science, things like that. And I'm a big fan of baking, mainly because I like the thing that comes after baking, which is eating the brownies. Also, I'm a big fan of cooking. I really enjoy cooking. It's a nice little hobby of mine when I actually be able to get to do it. But the one thing I feel like we forget about with cooking and specifically baking is we're doing a very specific type of science. That science is chemistry. And we're going to be talking about the chemistry of baking and cooking here today and the kind of the little nuanced things that we can learn to improve both of our baking and our cooking, because those are two separate skills.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that to me. Like sometimes, just for what you guys know out there, we come up with these topics and we say let's see where this leads us. But chemistry and baking, these, like, I always look at baking as chem lab. All right, like if those of you who are in high school took chem lab or even in college took chem lab, a lot of you're doing the same thing when you are in the kitchen and you are doing science experiments. And I guess Zach, you can know if you know chemistry and you know some, I guess those are probably thermodynamic properties. If you know that kind of stuff, it helps in the kitchen. But that doesn't mean you have to know that stuff. I mean, you don't have to know all the science. People who have been baking and cooking well before there was atomic theory, right? And so they were able to do it. It's just that now we know, like, when we see things happen or we read directions in recipes, we understand why we're doing what we're doing in order to get all the things to work out. So you like to bake brownies?
I mainly bake brownies. I exclusively bake brownies. There we go. Yeah, that's what but I would like to say I do have the claim of the best brownie baker in the family. I'm just going to lay that claim there. I'm not the best baker in the family. I'm the best brownie baker in the family. That's my interpretation.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So you just recently moved over the last couple of months to a new apartment, and you've been through a couple places over the last several years. Have you found that I'm guessing you pretty much use the same pots and pans, but you're using a different oven. Does that,
Yeah.
does it take, have you taken time to learn, like, do you learn your oven? Like you have a gas oven now, right? And that's is that a new thing for you?
Yeah, I know I need to cook things a little bit longer when I'm baking them. That's the biggest thing. When I cook something in the oven as like just like cooking it, like throw some pasta in to like get that little baked pasta feel or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Like that time's still the same. But the baking of the chemistry of the brownies, that does matter. And then that goes back to the point of, you kind of mentioned it. When you look at a recipe, specifically with baking, if you really want to get the best recipe, you want to do things by weight rather than by volume. And the reason you're doing that is because, well, flour has a certain amount of weight and you want to add X amount of flour to X amount of cocoa powder. And that ratio is not going to be very even if it's by volume, because with the volume is you can stuff it down to get, 1 cup of flour, and that can be really smushed in cup of flour. Or are you going to weigh the flour so you get 100 grams of flour and then you weigh that against 50 grams of cocoa powder? Cocoa powder is very fluffy. So if you really stuff it in there, you're going to get a lot of cocoa powder in a cup compared to something that's, brown sugar or something like that. So your ratios get off. So if you want to cook and if you want to bake specifically at a high or elite level, really focus in on the weight and the volume that you're using rather than the weight that you're using rather than the volume that you're using, because that's going to really bring out a uniqueness in the disc. Yes, if you don't have access to a scale or something like that, there are volumetric comparisons, but don't be super focused on making everything packed in. Oh, this is a cup, because that's going to lead to some problems.
So, okay, so that's a great question, because in our kitchen, I don't think we have a scale. Do you have a scale?
Is it allowed in the kitchen?
Well, I wander through there when I pick up Pop-Tarts that I drop into the toaster, and then your mother goes, "Sid, your Pop-Tarts are ready," like from the movie Toy Story. All right, but okay, so I got to ask you, do you have a scale?
No, I do not, but it's on the list of things to get.
Okay, so have you so do you watch cooking? Like, is that a hobby?
All I do on YouTube is watch cooking videos. That's a completely unrelated point.
Well, this okay, because that's interesting, because a long time ago, when we had cable at one apartment, and we could get one of those cable channels like HGTV, and then we could get, maybe it was Food Network, and your mom started watching lots of cooking shows, and if you want to realize that you suck at cooking, watch cooking shows. Like, if you want to realize you suck at woodworking, watch woodworking shows.
I disagree with that. If you want to realize that because I watch cooking things because I want to get better at this skill. So I'm going to surround myself with people who are better at it, regardless of how much I suck. Eventually, I'm going to be aggressively average at it, because if anybody knows me, I'm going to just work really, really hard and just beat the water in submission. My plan to swim, whenever I do my triathlon, my plan to swim for the triathlon portion is just to beat the water so hard into submission that I'm just able to walk through the swimming portion, and then we'll be good to go.
That would work. That is okay. So yesterday I went to a woodworking store, and they had like a demo of all sorts of tools and stuff like that. And it's amazing when you talk to elite people who do things. Like, I'm sure, Zach, when you watch YouTube stuff for baking and cooking, I find that when I watch the YouTube, the really good woodworkers, is I realize that, like, I'm not even sure I know how to measure properly. Right. And I have trouble making things flat and straight. And it's a really difficult thing. You see some people, they crank out dovetail joints in no time. And I'm sure people, it appears that they're just sloppy putting stuff together in the kitchen. And then they come out with some upset pineapple. What's your favorite thing? Pineapple upside down cake. Right. And they come out with something like that in an instant. This takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, so I have my brownie recipe written down in my kitchen, and I reference it visually most days just to see what it is and to kind of get in my head, this is how you create this thing. And the thing that you realize once you bake enough, especially something like brownies, cakes, pies, things like that, is that you have two different sets of ingredients. You have your dry ingredients and you have your wet ingredients. You mix them together separately, and then you combine them in together. And then when you combine them in together, rather than normally whisking them together like you would do if you're making, Betty Crocker brownies in a pan, easy to go brownies, is you're mixing them kind of with like a spatula to be able to fold them all in together, so they become that creamy battery base. And that's this thing that you might not pick up in understanding, like, oh, I'm doing that. Yeah, I put all my wet stuff together, my eggs, my maybe a little bit of sugar, the cocoa, the melted chocolate, whatever it may be. I have that all mixed together, and then I add it in with the flour. And then by doing that, and like we mentioned earlier, we're using by weight rather than volume. We're creating this thing, and by the end of it, it's all homogeneous. Is that the word I want?
Homogeneous, yeah.
That's right. Humongous entertainment together, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah, it is interesting to watch those people do that. Do you have a mixer? Do you have a mixer? Do you have like a little?
Yeah, I do. I plug it into the electrical socket, and then I go. Zzzz, but I don't use it for that because I like using the hand with my whisk.
Well, that's interesting. That's a lot like when I have a what's called a random orbit sander in my workshop, and that's not a sander that like goes around the garage like at different rates of speed, and you never know which way it's going. It's not that kind of random orbit. It's like it's when it does its little thing, it doesn't leave little scratches. But when you use the random orbit sander, it is a different feeling than when you sand by hand. And I think I'm seeing what you're saying. When if you are stirring that stuff in by hand, you're getting a better feel
The
for the
consistency, and then one when you
and
do
the
it the next
composition.
time,
Yeah.
what it should be, or what this type, like a brownie batter compared to a cake batter compared to a brown to cookie batter. Those are
Okay.
three very different things. For
So
the
cake.
most part, they all are the same various base, but they all have different batter consistencies for what you're trying to create. A cookie dough batter, you're going to be able to mold with your hand and be put in a little ball, make a smiley face out of it, whatever it may be. A cake and a brownie batter are very similar. You're pouring it in, it's viscous, it's going to take up that container, but they're going to feel different.
Viscous is no, it's not viscous. Viscous is means it doesn't. It's the cookie dough is very viscous.
Well, they're the same.
It's
The
runny,
same.
runny. It's runny.
No, it's not runny though, because
Okay, but
runny would be like water. Like water is
well,
runny.
it's more viscous than water, but it's less viscous than cookie dough.
Yeah,
All right.
on the
So,
scale, on the
so
graph.
but so brownie, but does brownie mix you think is more viscous than cake batter? Brownie
It's
batter?
denser. I'm not. It's different. It's different. It also depends on the cake
All right.
because you can have different types of cake. You have flourless cake. You can have really dense, thick, almost fudge like cake. You can have fudge like brownies. Like there is there's a balance there, and it's understanding that it's being creative with it. It's diving into it. That's the thing that we kind of often forget about, and it's the same thing that happens with cooking. It's the same thing that happens with woodworking. When you surround yourself, when you do things slowly, 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 you develop little skills and tactics and a feel. And if you talk to an athlete, I know this as a rugby player, there's a certain feel I get around a ruck or something like that when I know I'm able to dive off to the side and attack with me rather than passing that ball out. Like you get used to that rather than just reacting very much. Oh, I do this thing, this formulaic approach. You get creative with it, and I've mentioned this before. And the moment you start getting creative with something is the moment you get good at it.
So you okay. So I'm seeing where this is going a little bit, and so you have a brownie batter mix or a recipe for your brownie batter, and you don't do it from Betty Crocker's.
No,
Or
I've evolved past that, which is why I'm the
no, that's
best
great.
brownie maker in the family.
I'm sure you are. And the so have you experimented with that? What do you tweak that ever? Do you like what I'm
So
going
I
to do?
currently do it by volume, and I've
Okay.
tweaked the volume metric amounts because I realized there's a little too much flour in here. I don't like that much flour, so I'm going to add maybe a little bit cocoa powder, take a little bit of flour out, work that stuff in, just tweak with the brownies, and the same thing I mentioned earlier with how much time am I putting it in the oven? It might be XYZ time, but I want to put it in and I want it to rest for 2-3 hours. Make sure I'm able to cut it up, and there's good fudgy brownies that people want from Zach because I'm the best.
Yeah, in the family. Yeah. So the
Thank
okay.
God
So
for me.
so when you okay. So I'm a statistician. All right, and we have done. I took this class in graduate school called Design and Analysis of Experiments. And this is the thing. And we actually talked in graduate school about brownies, right? And because there's lots of different parameters that go into your brownies, right? How much of this and how much of that? How long do you cook it? How long do you let it rest? All these other things. And the general conclusion is one that puts most bakers, that rubs bakers and chefs the wrong way. All right. But the only way to say it is a way that does that. All right. And I'm going to say it and then I'm going to explain what it means. Right. And the thing is, you cannot make brownies better than the Betty Crocker brownie mix. You can't do it. All right. And by better, okay, you have to understand what it is they are They have an
What
objective.
are we defining better as is a
Yeah, see
better
this
question.
this is where it is. Okay, so they regularly test different parameters in the brownie mix. Okay, and they test it against real people sampling these brownies. So they'll go out and say, rate the brownies, give us a score, and they will maximize that score by doing this design of experiments thing. They will vary how much flour and how much cocoa and all these other kinds of things, and they will do that. And your brownie mix will not beat theirs in that test, right? Because they are already there. But you know what? It's not about, and this is a thing that's hard for statisticians to deal with. It's not about winning on the average, like Betty Crocker does, because they make Betty Crocker and Duncan Hines and all those other large corporations. They make brownie mix to sell and to appease the masses. And you're not trying to appease the masses. You're trying to appease you, right? And the other people that eat your brownies. So you have a recipe that you guys like, and hey, if you like that, then that is the one that you should use. But you should always be willing to try to say, well, maybe I need, like you said, I need a little more cocoa powder, a little less flour. I need to use a bigger pan or a smaller pan, or I need to cook at higher temperatures or lower or something like that. You should feel, I mean, obviously you do. You should feel free to adjust that and not and be willing to fail. Be willing to.
Additionally, but in order to do that, you have to do the base level, like, find the recipe online, do that base level, and then figure out, okay, I like chocolate. I really like chocolate. So I add in chocolate chips, even though the recipe doesn't say add in chocolate chips. I do that because I like that. I add chocolate chips on the top because
you like chocolate.
There we go. Like, I'm going to be creative and have fun with that. It's the same thing with anything else you do, but you have to at least establish and start at the base level at some point before you move on and through.
So are there other things? Do you generally, okay, so there's the thing. I think my father likes frosting on brownies. Are you a brownie froster?
Okay, if you put frosting on brownies, just go eat cake.
Well,
you know what? That's if you want to put frosting on brownies, go eat cake. Because
I hear you. I'm not.
The reason you want the brownie is because the brownie creates that certain level of crispy, flaky, fun thing on the top. That's what makes a brownie fun, and the edges. The edges are also fun.
Okay,
hang on. I'm not done here.
Okay,
mashing people who put frosting. If you're going to put frosting on something, go eat a cupcake. Go have cake. Cool, whatever. But do not put frosting on my brownies.
I got you. Okay. But I gotta ask the question though, okay? Because I am a fan of the edge brownie. Okay, I am a fan of the edge brownie because and this is kind of like the little science thing. All right, the brownie along the edge cooks differently than the brownie in the middle, right? Because of what it's touching. Right, it's touching the metal pan. All right, and there are pans you can get now that are essentially all edge. Okay, so they have like a serpentine pattern through them that makes every brownie have at least two edges, right? So you don't always have to get, so that's awesome. All right. And then it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like a snake pattern. So do you have the edge brownie pan?
No, I have a 9-inch brownie pan.
Okay. I got to ask just this question because we were talking the other day and you didn't have a certain pan and you got a different pan for the recipe.
Oh, this was a different brownie experiment, but yeah, I now own a 9-inch dedicated brownie pan. But at the time that I was making these other brownies, I had a 13 by 9, but the recipe called for an 8 by 10 or whatever. So I measured out to what X was, to what might it be, and I just had the brownies go out to that length, and then I just put them in the oven, and I was able to have brownies. It was awesome.
I'm really surprised. I'm surprised that the brownies didn't flow over to fill.
Brownies aren't that they don't flow that much.
Okay. All right. So did you? Okay. So then the thing that comes into my head is that I'm thinking about that. I was thinking as you were doing that, if the brownies were not very viscous, I gotta look that up. What's the opposite of viscous? All right. If they were very runny, then it would fill to that. It would go to that side, and then I would be tempted to take that brownie pan and set it at a very slight, like put like a plate underneath one edge of the brownie pan. And let it kind of so they couldn't. So on that end, on one end they'd be really, really shallow, and the other end would be thicker. And I just wonder, like, like I understand brownies, like you need them to cook all the way through, and I wonder if you would have some that were just if it just would get too burnt, and the others would be too gooey still. But you didn't have that problem with brownies; they just kind of stayed where you told them to stay.
Yep, they're like dogs.
They're, well, they're like, brownies are like. So what have we learned? We've learned today that
If you put brownies on if you put frosting on brownies, just go eat cake and surround yourself with people who are good at something so you can learn how to be better at it if you're interested in the skill.
All right, so okay, I want to move past brownies just a little bit. All right, because we talked about. Wait, did I ever get? Are you edge or center brownie person?
I prefer depends on the edge.
Okay.
So you can have a brownie pan and you can cook your brownie where your edge just ends up being a crispy, just crunchy, like granola texture. That's not good. But I want that edge where it's like, I bite into it. It's not like it's super soft like it would be the middle, but like there's a little bit of a bend and playability to it. That's the edge I want.
Okay, now, okay.
But if that edge does not exist, I'm taking a middle brownie because at least I know what I'm going to get. But if that edge is not that crispy, fun, it's not worth it.
No, okay, so I got a couple other questions for brownies. All right, so you put the chocolate chips in the brownies, okay, and we all know that most chocolate chips are basically oil with a little bit of cocoa in them. So, did you experience any like? Did they melt but kind of stay in the same spot? Do they goo themselves out?
Depends on. So there's the brownies that go on top, and then there's the brownies that's actually in the batter itself.
Oh, the
batter itself brownies are gonna like pretty much stay as chocolate chips, very similar to like chocolate chip cookies.
Okay.
But the ones on top, those are gonna melt and spread out, and then they're gonna kind of harden, and then you kind of get these like hardened chocolatey islands on top of the chocolate brownie.
In a sea of chocolate brownies.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Like, yeah, it was kind of neat.
Let's go ahead and set Thanksgiving.
You are doing that?
Well, that's my plan.
Okay, that's good. Well,
I'm not sure what we're going to actually have for Thanksgiving, but there's going to be brownies.
There's going to be brownies. All right,
without frosting because don't want cake.
Okay, so I got and I saw you have made, what do they call them? Brownie cookie? What's the thing? Brookies. Yeah. So you made separate cookie dough or bought separate cookie dough?
I bought the thing from Betty Crocker.
Okay. And
so
you made
so there was a cookie dough recipe and there was a brownie recipe. You made the brownies. The brownies are the base, and then you add little globs of cookie dough on top.
On top,
on top of the brownie, and then the brownie cooks on top of the cookie dough. It's very similar to how
the cookie cooks on top of the brownie.
Yeah, okay. It's very similar to how when you poach an egg in tomato sauce. You have the tomato sauce is cooking, and then you poach the egg on top of this tomato sauce. It's the same concept.
Okay, and the cookies
like shakshuka for dessert.
So the cookie would spread out on top of the brownie. Now, was it? Did it turn out the way you wanted, or are you going to do that again?
I think I ended up whipping the butter too much, so I ended up with whipped butter in the cookie dough rather than just like it being a good solid cookie dough.
Okay,
but I'm going to try it again at some point. But
all right, so you're not going to see. So the cookie dough is real thick, right? And the brownie is batter essentially. And you can't like do a swirl cake where you put the two together.
You probably could, but I don't think it would be what you wanted. I mean, you could do that. Would it cook the way you want? Probably not. Is it going to end what you want it to be? Probably not.
So cookies don't cook as long as brownies, though. Brownies got to go like almost 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
28, 30 minutes, something like that.
But the cookie is usually touching the base of that pan, so they're getting baked from the bottom, and then the brownie batter isn't going to get as hot, so it kind of balances out.
What about convection ovens?
Science, statistics, people figured it out.
So do you have a convection oven? A convection oven?
I have an oven.
Just a regular, oven?
I don't know. It makes oven noises.
Does
oven things.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, just because a cat has kittens in the oven doesn't make them muffins.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to make brownies with the chocolate chips on top.
Yeah.
Okay. What about other things in brownies?
Like
well, some people like walnuts or pecans or I don't know, jelly beans. Well,
or I don't know. Add like too many things into the brownie, you lose what makes the brownie special. What makes the brownie special is like that rich, decadent, fudgy, gooey browniness, and then once you add more stuff in there, it's just like might as well just have a kitchen sink cookie. Like the brownie. It's just a brownie.
Nice. All right,
It doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be special. If you want to do that, go have a cake.
I hear you.
You have carrot cake and upside down pineapple. You have all those, but you just have brownies, and we just need to stay with brownies.
All right. No, that's
the hill
good.
I die on.
All right. Well,
what happens to Zach? Well, he got in a fight with a guy over brownies.
So ice cream on brownies with brownies?
Oh yeah, that's a supplement thing, but you're not cooking them.
Oh right, yeah, okay, all right.
It's a complement thing. It's that vanilla chocolate yin yang duality thing we got going on.
All right. And do you keep them warm? Do you eat the warm brownies with ice cream, or
Well, it depends on the brownie itself. Like sometimes when you take the brownies out of the oven, they need to sit for a while because if you just take them out right away, they're just going to be a gooey mess, and that's not worth it. So maybe you might heat up the brownie for just a second after they're cooled down, add a little bit of ice cream. Then you got that yin, yang, yang, yin going on with the hot, cold chocolate, vanilla happiness.
It's just a little bit of a little microcosm of the cosmos. It's a microcosmos. Yeah. Okay. So, and you have a dedicated brownie pan, and what you said 9x9. Did you just go get this one?
Yeah, I got this a couple weeks ago.
All right. Non-stick stick. Bonus extra stick.
Non-stick.
Okay. All right, and it's dedicated just to the brownies.
Yep.
All right. Okay, and you're liking your new gas stove.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you that. So is there a new thing? Is there a way you're going with this? Okay, so you got brownies down. Are you going after like, I don't know, you going to do pancakes next? Or you
I already got pancakes down.
Super cake, or are you going to do something?
Just like, and then just normal cooking. I'm really good at making breakfast food.
Yeah.
And I like pasta. I'm not very creative with the dinner cooking just because cooking dinner is, well, I got 700 things going on. So it's just like sometimes hard to do. It's just like, I'm going to have breakfast food for dinner.
Do you think breakfast food is easy? Because, I mean, I always think of it as pretty easy stuff. Do you think it's easy because like before breakfast, people are like, they were asleep and they're just like, got to get up and got to get doing it. It has to be of that type. Otherwise it wouldn't be good breakfast. The amount of work that goes into things like making a lasagna. I mean, you can't have lasagna for breakfast. It's just like too complicated to make.
With that attitude, you prep it beforehand, you're ready to go. But like, I think, prioritize your time. Make sure you give time to the stuff that you care about. That's what I'm going to say to that. Like, if you want to make time, you can make some really fancy breakfasts that are just as over the top as making lasagna.
You could make breakfast lasagna.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think there's a lesson here in I see 2 or 3 different little pieces here. I see learn how to do something so you get a success, and then experiment with that and be willing to fail, right? And then learn why, like if it's succeeding or failing, figure out why so that you don't succeed or fail again.
And a fourth thing is surround yourself with people who are better at the thing that you do so you can get better at the thing that you do because it brings you joy.
Yeah. As long as and if you are one of those people that's better at a thing than somebody else, then you probably recognize how difficult it was to get there, and be gracious and be, I don't know, kind with welcoming somebody new to the group instead of a statement like, well, of course we all knew that. That doesn't help somebody come in. So welcome people to your group when they come in, whether it's whatever your hobby is, whatever the work is that you're doing. You were a rookie once too, and that's an okay place to be.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. That's all I got here today. I want to thank you all for listening. I want to remind you to go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.